Donald Trump is immediately getting pushback. Now I'm hearing that some of his top cabinet picks might be rejected because of conflict of interest with the way that Congress works. To go through all of this, I have Paul Stone. Paul, thank you for coming on again.
Absolutely great to be here, and thank God Trump won.
Yes. What was your reaction down there in Florida when you learned that he was going to be president again?
I was texting with Roger Stone and some people, in his that have promoted him for a long time, Kudlow and Greg Kelly from Newsmax, and we were all shocked in a way, because if the last election was massaged or hijacked, whatever term you want to use, then why wouldn't all of the rest of them be? It was shocking. I was saying on your show right before the election, I believe I was on your shows, most shows, I was saying he'll win the election if there is one. He obviously won't win the election if there actually isn't one, in the few states that he had to have. He had to have Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan. And so it was a big shock, right, that there actually was an election. And that's confusing in its own right. But damn grateful for the challenges he overcame and continued on and went full throttle right to the end and won.
Yeah, well, he's got a lot of momentum going. He's had issues with Matt Gaetz, who's now stepped away. There's lots of rumors going around about who might be FBI director, Secret Service director. But one that has me concerned is Donald Trump wants RFK Jr. to come in and keep his promise of making America healthy again. And to do that, RFK feels like he needs to revamp the FDA, the CDC, hold big pharma accountable, big food accountable. But can he get confirmed? My worry is many members of the Senate get donations to get elected from big pharma. And many of them, it's the number one area that they hold stock, the military industrial complex, and then big pharma. Yeah. Any worries on your end that the Senate might be biased against actually appointing him?
Yeah, this is actually a great under the microscope view at what we as the citizenry have to stay in a quandary about. And that is, it's a great idea to have someone who wants to rip some things apart and tear apart that which stands in between us getting great representation from our governmental leaders, FDA, CDC, National Institute of Health, I guess the FBI and all the lawfare efforts. And so can the people then that need to actually act on the altruism and the healthiness that Trump is trying to bring back to the swamp, can those people actually carry through on what we want? We want an FDA, that isn't funded by the drug companies, and the drug company people don't go work there when they retire. Most of us probably saw the Netflix series, Dope Sick, I think it was called, on the creation the Sackler families gave humanity in the way of oxycodone. That's horrific. How do you get a narcotic to be a class B narcotic when everything that comes from morphine is class A? Through the methodology of doping the FDA leadership into this massive plague that toxifies our humanity here in America and around the world. We need that. We need those institutions rid of anything that actually isn't thinking of the American individual first. So I do have fear that, the typical games, the reason it's called a swamp, will remain the swamp. That resistance will stay in place. It's hard to serve two masters. Trump will only be there for a little while. The senator wants to be there forever, and obviously the drug companies are going to be there forever. So it's hard to serve two masters. I do have fear over how effective the thrust from Trump's campaign will deliver goods for us. It won't be his fault. It'll be other humans.
Yeah. What's sad is my fear is it's going to be the rhino Republicans that block his agenda. For example, we've now learned in the last 24 hours that one of the reasons that Matt Gaetz stepped down so that he didn't distract from Trump's momentum was Mitch McConnell came out and said, I've got 3 other people that do what I want that are never going to confirm Matt Gaetz. So here you have Mitch McConnell already standing in the way of Donald Trump's agenda. We got to get rid of Mitch McConnell. I mean, this guy over and over again sabotages the Republican Party and sabotages Donald Trump's desires to make America great again. Your thoughts on that?
The good old party. It's not the new old party. It's not the new party. It's the good old party. And this is if there was one, and maybe there were two things that the framers missed: term limits. And it would have been beautiful if they could have mandated a balanced budget, that the government could not take on debt other than unless Congress declared war. Then they could issue, war bonds or something. But if the government could not take on debt, create any debt whatsoever, unless we're in declared war status, and term limits, there wouldn't be a Mitch McConnell. You have people that wouldn't be able to create these linkages and these legacies to the corporate world, to the lobbyist world. That's why I said it's hard to serve two masters, right? It's why it would be hard to have two wives or two husbands.
Yeah.
I mean, it's sickening. This is America. If I could curse just once, those assholes are there to represent our best interests, not theirs. And it just makes me so mad.
Yeah. Well, when you see members of Congress using insider trading information to buy military industrial complex stocks right before declaring, we're going to send $100 billion to Ukraine. And then those stocks just continue to rise. So, yes, we better get another round of $65 billion to Ukraine. COVID is coming. Sell all of your hotel and vacation stocks, your cruise line stocks. I mean, it's just like you say, they can't serve two masters. And yet over and over again, we catch them serving two masters.
Or the wrong master, right? I mean, how ridiculous is it that earthquake that leveled Haiti and Clinton's foundation fund is in charge of the money receiving and disbursement? I mean, we heard the horror stories. Maybe $500 billion did not end up in the ground in Haiti. So it's saddening. And this is why the core of my message has always been, make America great again where your feet are. Wherever your individual feet are, make your segment to America great again by especially, most of the folks we're talking to, right, Stephen, are probably in their 50s, 60s, 70s and older, men and women, beautiful people. Continue to lead, continue to set the example, continue to be something shiny against the dullness of the resistance around us. We caught a little victory here that Kamala isn't in the White House. We can't wait. You can't Uber eat democracy. You can't Uber eat change. It's not going to show up in all the ways you want it to without you participating and creating it where you live.
Yeah. Let me go back to the Matt Gaetz thing for a second, because, you have this loudmouth Republican who says he's willing to go after these members of Congress. You then have a Democrat DOJ, but then they don't charge him on something that would have sent him to jail. The whole thing is really, really weird. And yet, according to DOGE, $18 million of taxpayer money was used to cover up sexual harassment lawsuits for members of Congress. Don't you think as taxpayers, we deserve to hear those stories and those names? Because otherwise, why did they pay out money where with Matt Gaetz, there was no money paid out and he didn't have a single charge brought against him?
Yeah, I mean, in the world of that identity politic that the Democrats have spun off into a movement, the consciousness of identity politics is nothing has to be proven. It simply has to be accused. It simply has to be stated. And that must mean it's true. It's like the books from 1980, that are similar to 1984. Eventually you'll distrust what you see and believe what you hear. And so he's a victim of that. Now, people do make mistakes. It's ridiculous that we expect our elected officials to walk on water as they go to work. But again, the double standard, the attacks on one's reputation or namesake that are accusations that don't have enough credibility to make it to a courtroom is ridiculous. Freedom of the press was was more about the press being able to get into closed doors and investigate things. But in the Walter Cronkite era, which probably all died, you always had to verify your thoughts on things by two sources. So leveling accusations against someone in a very reputation sensitive job, like a politician, is utterly wrong if it isn't actually just reporting the conviction news of that accusation. That's the only accusation that really matters, would be if you're convicted of something.
Yeah. There's a lot of optimism behind this new Department of Government Efficiency that will be headed up by Vivek Ramaswamy, Elon Musk, and then this morning I'm reading Marjorie Taylor Greene will be assigned by Representative James Comer. One of their goals is to cut $2 trillion from the U.S. annual budget. Since you deal in finance and gold and silver, can the damage done by Biden to the U.S. dollar be repaired, especially in light of BRICS nations gaining so much momentum globally to compete with the U.S. dollar?
This answer, a lot of folks might not like it, but it's truth, because it's based in precedents. And until we have a brand new example of a completely different outcome from what governments have been able to produce since the Romans to today, we have to go with precedents. We just have to, because one's retirement savings is a very precious thing. Just consider it financial oxygen, especially if you're retired. You've got an oxygen tank on your back that you sip on that allows you to go on cruises, not have to work, visit the grandkids, barbecue, take a canoe trip, go see Alaska, all that stuff, or do nothing and watch the news all day. That financial oxygen is precious, and it's based in the dollar. The government has been printing those dollars to pay its bills. They now have to print on average $7 trillion or more a year. We're creating $2.5 trillion in debt faster and faster, more than just a year, to finance paying the bills that the government receives to conduct economy and economic activity actions in our country. So if you say, well, the heroin addict is up to 4 shots a day and you par him back to 3, he's going into convulsions. He's going to go into seizures, because his system is used to that injection, that artificial injection of that drug. And so our economy is used to the $7 trillion a year. It doesn't matter if $2 trillion is being wasted. It's still being spent here within the economy. And I'm against government. I think the government should be a third or a tenth the size that it is. I think it should only act as a facilitator. A facilitator between parties, regulating where a highway should be laid, or train rail between the states, or trade amongst states. But it shouldn't be a massive authority like it is. It was never supposed to be. This was supposed to be a republic, and we're in charge. So when you look at DOGE wanting to cut $2 trillion from a $7 trillion budget, in a way, if you thought of government function and those financial contributions to the economy, we're living down here on the surface of the earth. We're getting a very rich supply of oxygen, albeit artificial, because the dollar now is only worth 3 cents when it used to be worth 100. So printing the money does have a negative consequence. If you cut $2 trillion from that 7, it would be bringing society up to exist at an altitude of 16,500 feet. Now, when you fly, they mention, hey, we're above 10,000. That means the plane is pressurized so that we breathe enough oxygen while we're in the plane. If it wasn't pressurized, we'd all pass out, and we would die if we got up to 30,000 feet. When you're climbing Everest, you're literally dying as you climb. There's not enough oxygen to sustain our life at those altitudes. So it's just a visual. Yes, they can cut something probably, but anything they cut and then the government doesn't spend in our economy then goes without. And I'll finish, is GDP has been a negative number since 2009 without the printed money, without quantitative easing, and all of the different ways the government has been cheating our bankruptcy from being felt. Eventually, when the dollar's worth nothing, you'll feel it. And so cutting is great in a way to try to make the dollar great again. And it has to happen, but there will be significant pain in your pocketbooks and the performance of things that appreciate from good news. Those things will all struggle, just based on the history books that the governments in charge have written in the reserve currency countries before us.
Okay. One thing that I'm kind of confused about is when I read international news, I read about all of these countries and banks that are buying up gobs of gold. Mm-hmm. But here in America, the Federal Reserve is not. Is that because them buying gold would, I don't know, look hypocritical to digitally inventing and printing trillions of dollars? I don't understand why the Federal Reserve is so against gold and silver.
The dollar is the gold. So what Nixon did is he made the dollar gold. Gold then is irrelevant in our economy, and it's irrelevant to the rest of the world, except for when the dollar isn't viable anymore, which it will be. It is literally a math problem. It's not theoretical. We can sit here and argue for hours who's going to win the Super Bowl. We're 6-7 weeks away from knowing, or whatever, 8 weeks away from knowing who those teams will be. And still we could guess about, of the two teams, who would win the Super Bowl. This is a math problem. This isn't a competition. This isn't some party wins and some party loses. This is just the math shows the dollar is dead one day and governments would have to switch on to something else. If you want any buoyancy, an element of buoyancy in your financial system, it's going to have to be from some commodity. Being that gold and silver doesn't perish, you don't really need it in the world except for solar panels. When it comes to silver and airbag sensors, when it comes to gold, you can just have it sit somewhere. The Federal Reserve is still sitting, the New York Fed is still sitting on an estimated 15,000 tons of gold there in Manhattan. Forget the exact name of the building or the street it's on, but it's in southern Manhattan. And is that of use to us anymore? No, it's not. It would be great use to actually, instead of giving stimmy checks, give our citizenry gold and silver that they could then liquidate to money and go use around town if they had to, because you wouldn't be hurting the money supply at that point. You wouldn't be hurting the dollar. If they were selling off that gold to finance their shortfalls, that would be great. Eventually you're going to run out of gold. And because they can't solve the problem causing the bills to continue, they can't stop printing the dollar. So it eventually dies. It gives smaller countries a buoyancy in their books when everything busts. And it will. I'm not predicting my crystal ball. I'm just saying, if you look at the government, it can't change. And you look at the bills continue to grow and accelerate. You look at how fast the debt is created, it's accelerating. That tells you something. Unless something interferes with those accelerating problems, then they accelerate until they're exhausted the resource that they're using to keep us from feeling the bankruptcy, which is the killing of the dollar.
Okay. But in terms of buying power, we go out 20 years. Based on history, the dollar is going to buy less and less goods, and gold would be redeemed into dollars and able to buy more goods, right?
If you theoretically, or to try and paint a picture, the dollars you move to gold today don't worsen anymore. So when you look at when they really had to start printing the money, it was back around the year of 2000. That's where debt was 4 trillion. Today it's almost 36 trillion. Back then the dollar's worth 56 cents. Today it's worth 3. Gold was 300. Today it's 2,600, 2,700. Call it 2,500 just for a nice even number. 300 to 2,500. So as the dollar has died, gold has risen. So when you come out of gold, yes, you might get wheelbarrow fulls of money, of $100 bills when you're coming out of gold. And I don't see how we have 20 years. The dollar's losing 2 cents of buying power a year. It only is worth 2.7 cents today. That means next year, or somewhere in that proximity, it's worth 0.7 of a penny. The year after that, it's worth 1/10 of a penny. You'll be paying $40 for a Starbucks based off the economic analysis that I'm reading. Hyperinflation is the ultimate threat. So when you look at this buying power, how do we have 20 years? We've spent those years. And that's what I try to bring attention to, this math problem. It's a language that can't lie, and there is no vagueness in it either. It would take $33 from 2024, spread them out across your dining room table, 33 to buy something that cost $1 in the 40s or the 50s or the 60s. Please let that horrify you into understanding that this stuff can't be solved from the podium. It can't be solved from the Resolute desk. in the Oval Office.
Is that because of the Federal Reserve, where basically they've hijacked the money system when it was put into place in 1913?
Yeah, it's literally like you started a committee that would manage the country's weather, when before that, there was no management. There was no setting of interest rates. Interest rates found their own level. When inflation crept in, the lenders of money would just charge more to borrow the money. And that would cause inflation to drop because it would squelch economic activity a little. When the Fed got in charge, they would manually play with interest rate levels. And then we're dealing with higher highs and lower lows. What Nixon did was literally remove anything that helped govern reality in our financial world. It's like deleting the moon, like shooting a nuclear missile off and blowing the moon up. Now the seas are unnavigable. The moon keeps our seas capable for sailing and living right near the beach. Without that moon, we would never live anywhere near a beach, and we would have never sailed on any ocean because you'd have 200-300-foot waves rolling all over the place, crashing miles into shore. Just think of the world without the moon. So that's what gold meant to our dollar. You know, we used to have a stable coin. It was called the dollar. Yeah. You had a paper representation of gold in the vault, and that's what made the dollar stable. All the games that man has been playing to try to engineer financial greatness have caused us to be here today with 36 trillion in debt, a 2-penny, 3-penny dollar, and a faster accelerating pace for the need to print money even faster than we did last year or the year before. Yeah. It's horrifying. Yeah. And you'd say to yourself, well, how the hell can these people do that? Because none of you are in Washington. Einstein says the mind that creates the problem cannot possess the solution. People might get tired of me saying that, but what does that mean? It means that the mind that pulls the trigger on a mistake lacked the vision to see the mistake as the outcome of the choice. Therefore, Washington is staffed by people with no vision, and so was Rome, Spain, Portugal, the Dutch, the French, the British. Every government around the planet owes $303 trillion. That's not debt. That's the sign of how inept they are at interfering, managing, and involving themselves with the economies they sit on top of. Like if they were managing supply chain, nothing would get anywhere. The quality would be horrific. It would be months late. If they had to captain ships, they would end up in the wrong country. They'd run aground. They'd run into each other. If they were a sports franchise, they would never win a game. And if it was in football, you probably wouldn't even have 53 people on the team. That's what manages money around the world. They're the ones that get to print it. Nixon set that precedent, and it's destructive.
Yeah. Well, I know everyone listening to this understands it through their wallet. They understand inflation by how expensive. I'll bet let's say somebody on here is 55 years old. They're watching. They go back to their early 20s and think about how much a car costs, how much, groceries cost. I mean, everybody understands that. And yet I don't know that everyone understands that gold has just been marching along. I mean, under FDR, how much was gold? Wasn't it around like $27 an ounce or something?
When they stamped the system, gold was $20 an ounce. $20. When they decided they wanted to engineer us out of the Great Depression in their own way, it wasn't the only way to get us out. But they were in charge, so they get to pick the way out. They made our money, gold, illegal. It had been legal tender. Go shopping at the grocery store with an ounce of gold, and you got a week's worth of groceries for that ounce. Today, you would get way more than a week's worth of groceries for the same ounce of gold, and that $20 at the grocery store would get you a sandwich and a drink. So, in making gold illegal, meaning we don't need it anymore, we were also then forced by law to turn it into the banks, and they turned it into the Fed, and they weighed it out, and they're like, we don't have enough, so we're going to have to make gold $35 an ounce to fund the New Deal, Roosevelt, New Deal. They wanted to inject, and just hear this number for a reference point in your mind on just how horrific things are today. They needed $5 billion, $5 billion, just $5 billion to engineer us out of the Depression. I don't even know if it worked because the war that kicked off shortly thereafter helped us in a great and a great way to truly get out of the troubles we were in. But they thought, a cash injection into the economy would get the factories making boots and rail and steel and, lumber again. And then that'll cause the workers to come back, and it'll cause, we'll do the shovel ready projects. They were the investor in the projects, and that caused the economy to start turning again. But their idea could have happened in other ways. How they think of things is, well, let's just make everyone's money illegal. And then later it was raised up to $50 an ounce. When Nixon ended the relationship altogether, it was $50 an ounce. Today it's $2,600. Your dollar is 3 cents.
Yeah. So think about that. In 100 years, something went from like $20 to $2,700, but a $20 bill stamped with Andrew Jackson is not worth $2,700. Like, that's what I'm trying to help people understand, is there is just this widening separation between gold and the US dollar, and which one do you want to house your money in? That's why I'm such a big fan of gold and silver.
The $20 bill would be worth 60 cents today.
Wow.
60 cents.
60 cents.
Yeah. If $1 is worth 3 cents, then $20 is worth 60.
Wow.
There's a visual for you. Now, what did that do though? Well, it ran real estate up from 20 grand in 1971 to 440 grand average home price then and now. It ran the stock market up from 750 points to 45,000, right? So you just think, here's the other analogy I've used before. So financial reality, and the dollar lives on the 100th floor, and our investment world lives down here on the ground level. And if you want to get all these investments to be zany and sexy and get them up to the 100th floor, just push the dollar down to the 3rd floor. So now asset values are on the 97th floor, dollars down on the 3rd floor. Eventually the dollar hits zero, and this comes to meet it. Yeah. Because it is the only force that caused everything to be wildly more expensive or over-evaluated, have a ridiculous valuation on things. When you compare things to reality, all of our audiences probably knows what a slide ruler is. You just slid the dollar's value down, which caused the asset values to rise. You slide that back to $1 million home today is a $30,000 house if the dollar was restored to being worth 100 cents. And that might irritate people to hear that, who's done well in life in your audience, but it's just reality.
Yeah. Oh man, that is a good visual. Okay, final question. More government corruption. I swear I never run out of material. U.S. taxpayer money, $535 million of taxpayer money goes to the Corporation of Public Broadcasting, of which 90% of the $535 million goes towards left-wing propaganda, mainstream media. How can we ever get balanced news if 90% of the money the government gives for broadcasting goes to left-wing ideology?
Right. And that whole ideology has the affordability to exist from Nixon's decision. You're essentially, when you say taxpayers' money, they're printing so much of the money they spend. It's not our money. It's the future value of our money. They're stealing money from the year, 3000 and bringing it into the moment back in the 70s. They're pretty close to stealing value right now from the year 2030 and bringing it into 2024. Eventually these years meet, and all of that stuff you're worried about will go away. Money is not a commodity. Commodities can give value to paper versions of money, but money cannot be virtual. Modern monetary theory, people could look it up on Wikipedia and you'll get sick inside just reading a few paragraphs of the lunacy that the governments around the world aspire to the belief now that money is just a commodity and the government can create as much of it as it wants, which is hooey. Because if we got all the farmers around the world to just grow corn this year, to have 1 trillion years of corn, every year of corn would have the same nutritional value as all of the other years of corn from every country where the corn was grown. But if you create $1 trillion out of thin air and add it into the system, you kill the nutritional value of the dollars that are already in existence. So eventually that ends at zero. Now, mathematically, the government could print money until the dollar is 100th or 1,000th of a penny. But a coffee would cost you $100. Do you think your company is going to pay you $1 million a year for a job they're paying right now that's 50 grand a year? No. So it all breaks. Man cannot fly to the sun. We can fly near it. We could fly using it. We can do things because of the sun, but that's not a region we can ever get very close to. We just fry. But there are so many people with egos and they're just driven by madness, taking all of us with them on their journey to destruction over and over and over again. Every reserve currency country has not ended because of a war. It ended because of insolvency.
Well, look at Ukraine. As soon as Trump says no more money, that war is going to evaporate. I guess that's why Zero Hedge says oil and gold are the only real assets. This fake fiat money is just, it's cotton candy. Looks good, but as soon as it touches anything, it dissolves.
Yeah, it's a sugar high.
Yeah,
now,
it is.
Now, for anyone who passed away today, they passed away with their wealth intact. But there is a day when you zoom out just a little bit, because in the people that's listening, in their minds, they might be thinking, well, I mean, everything's fine right now, right? But let's zoom out 10, 20, 30 years, and let's just look a few years down the road. If you're losing $2 of buying power a year from a dollar that bought you 56 cents worth of goods in the year 2000, and today only buys you 3 cents, and you're losing the average of from 2000 to the year to today is losing 2 cents of that buying power a year, you're out of money in a couple of years. And you could think, well, how the hell could they let that happen? And again, I remind you, they aren't you in Washington. These are the ones who are actually running from solving problems. Let's say, Stephen, you and I grew up together. We played sports together. You were the quarterback and I was a receiver. And, we both go to college. We get the same degree. You go off and do something in the corporate world. I go off to the government. What's the difference? Why would I want a 50K job when you go out and get an 80K job? Why wouldn't I want that? Something must be keeping my mind from being okay with the world you're going off to live in. I have to go live in a world where I can't get fired. I have insane healthcare benefits. I have a great retirement plan. I can't be fired. My salary's guaranteed. Why would, well, I was a receiver. I'm not making any negative light out of receivers. I love receivers. But my point is, I caught the ball. You actually had a mind that would decide who you were throwing it to, or you're handing it off, or you're going to run it, or you're going to throw it away. You have a dynamic mind. Dynamic minds can't be the ones going to government. If they were, we wouldn't have any of these problems. They would never think, let's just kill our dollar this year to pay the bills we can't afford to pay, and someday we'll just stop doing that. That's insanity. Because the definition of insanity, we all know these days, is doing the same thing over and over, but expecting a different result. It's, when you live in northern Alaska, you're going to spend 2 months without the sun, and you're going to spend 2 months without the night. That's never going to change. You can live there all your life and go, damn it, this year it's going to be different. I just know it's going to be different. It's not. It's not going to be different. So Rome to the United States of America, of course the BRICS nations are going to want to take over. I think when you look at that and they actually come to the power position, the world fragments into 3 zones. Those willing to deal with North America, Canada, and Mexico. Europe is stuck in the middle between these 2 empires because you would have 2 of the largest energy producers in BRICS. You have Russia and you have Saudi Arabia, and you have more than half the world's population with India and China. So any way you look at it, it's the end of the printed money regime. It's coming to the end. And I know how crazy that sounds, but that's what the math is saying. So where your money is located will dictate how you experience this eventual crisis.
Yeah. Paul, thank you for coming on. I always enjoy getting your insight on government corruption, money. It's always a good conversation. Just as we end, I just want to give a shout out to your company. Thank you so much for sponsoring the channel. People don't realize I'm able to leave my job and do research because of sponsors like you. I'm not taking money from the government to be a propaganda news journalist. I'm not taking money from companies that betray our country and our values. I'm working with really good companies that help keep my business open, the lights on, so that I can bring people the truth. It's hard to fight against MSNBC, but look, I'm growing and they're shrinking, and that's because I tell the truth and they lie. So anyway, if you guys want to learn more about gold and silver, Colonial Metals Group is the sponsor that I vetted and chose to work with. I own gold and silver myself. You guys can check out colonialmetalsgroup.com/Stephen-Gardner, or give them a call at 800-807-2143. Paul, thank you so much for coming on. And again, thank you for sponsoring the channel. And we'll have you on again here in the near future.
Absolutely. Thank you, Stephen. And it's so great to talk to you and your audience. The only thing the thing that motivates me to come on shows is so people could see my face and hear my tone of voice. And any question, bring the hardest questions you have next time and try to stump me. I can't be stumped. Why? Because I go down to the ground level to understand stuff. We can't understand much if we're staring at symptoms. We have to trace the cause. Where does this come from? What's caused this? How are things different when they never used to be like this all throughout humanity for thousands of years? Why are these last 54 years so different than what humanity used to be governed by and live within realities? And so I just feel heartbreak for anyone who's not yet aware of just how things have become, why they've become the way they are. And that's why I think I'm proud of in my ability to take complicated, situations or topics and make them very simple. Hopefully that's what I'm accomplishing with you and your audience.
Well, it's why I like having you on. Hey, thank you so much. And I hope you have a great rest of your day.
You too. God bless you. God bless America. And God bless the great efforts Donald Trump is making to make America great again.
Amen.